So listen, this is an opportunity for me to talk about things that I probably wouldn't share anywhere else. And honestly, I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I think it's probably gonna be a long one. For some of you, it might be worth clicking away, but for the rest of you, you're gonna get a comprehensive breakdown of what I think your church should be doing on social media. And in all honesty, this is the video that I wish I had 10 plus years ago when I was first asked by my pastor to run the Facebook page for our church, because I was clueless, but I was the young person in the room, and maybe your story isn't all that different right now. So here's how this video is going to break down. I've grouped the content into 4 parts. We're gonna start by discussing the new era of social media that we're in. Yes, social changes a lot, but what we've seen in the past few years is different from anything else we've ever seen before. And so even if you've been at this for a while, and I see this all the time, if you're still using the best practices from the previous era of social, you're sunk. From there, we'll go to social media policy for churches and the 10 rules I want you to install at your church. From there, we'll go to your church's social media calendar and get real granular in how I sketch out an entire week's worth of content for a church. And then finally, something I've never shared before. I call it the social ministry mountain. And this is how we're gonna demonstrate what we're doing on social and how it actually translates to in-person. Because this is the sticking point for so many churches, and especially older leaders, and it sabotages churches online, most of whom have the best intentions, but just don't see how social can actually make a difference in what they're doing in their church building. And what's so devastating about that is that social media is transforming churches around the world. And I truly believe it's the single best way for your church to reach new people in your community. Publishing is free. The new algorithms prioritize local distribution. The opportunity is there for any church. To help with that, I've put together a downloadable ebook to accompany this video. If you scan the QR code on the screen right now, you can download the ebook. It's just as comprehensive as this video. And of course, while I encourage you to take notes throughout the video, if you missed something or if you're just wanting that work done for you, the ebook has all of the materials contained inside. Now, if you don't know me, you might be asking, okay, why should I trust this guy? What makes what he's about to say worth listening to in the first place? And I could tell you that some of the largest churches in the world continually seek me out for help with their online presence, but what matters more to me are the small and mid-sized churches that I dedicate my professional life to. And all of you are always so gracious in sending in reports that what I'm teaching is really working in your churches. And by working, we mean reaching more people with the good news, seeing social media used as a springboard for discipleship and growing the church. What I always love to say is this stuff works. And for those of you that are actually putting that stuff into action, you are the churches that inspire me. And then lastly, before we get into it, the final bit of skepticism I want to stamp out: I don't have a course to sell you. This material is not a veiled sales pitch to the actual training or the actual stuff that really works. For the past 10 years, I have run a profitable church media company. We've got roughly 20 full-time employees, a Canadian location, a stateside location, remote employees scattered around. We earn money through software and through working with churches one-on-one. We do not earn a dime from selling courses. We do not sell any courses or any kind of training whatsoever. And this is very important to me because I want to give away everything I know to you for free. I want to show you exactly how we do all of it. If you want me to do it for you, I'm glad to. I'll tell you more about that later, but what I have the freedom to do is to be completely forthright with you and not hold anything back. So let's get into it. Now, since I began helping churches with social media roughly 10 years ago, I have been hearing some version of this same remark. The early church didn't have social media. And look, I'm all for taking cues from the early church. So why stop at social media? Here's what else the early church didn't have: indoor plumbing, electricity, air conditioning. Does your church have any of those? That's a shame. What about hymnals, the New Testament, nonprofit status? Not a part of the early church either, I'm afraid. And don't get me started on the irony of typically where people tell me that the early church didn't have social media. They're telling me that on social media. So hear me loud and clear on this. If social media platforms are useful enough to share your belief that social media is bad, then they're just as qualified to share the message that God is good. When someone says to you, the early church didn't have social media or something else to that effect, just remember, this person almost certainly is not interested in modeling the early church in its fullness. They might want to claim some Christian high ground to feel superior and holier than thou, or more likely, they're weaponizing ecclesiology to get their way, which is something that I, to be honest, have a very strong distaste for. Now, Let's consider an alternative perspective. Maybe you are someone or you know someone that just isn't really comfortable with churches embracing social media completely or indiscriminately. And it's not that you have sinister intentions or anything like that, you're just a bit unsure of it. Now, that's a conversation worth having. And even if you are fully on board with churches using digital platforms already, this is important for you as well, because we all need to know what's motivating us deep down. For my part, I start with the Great Commission. Jesus said, quote, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations." So the mandate here is to be where the people are. And social media checks that box in a big way. In fact, across all groups, including age, race, gender, income, education, urban, rural, suburban, social media is used by the vast majority of US adults. And not only are social platforms used by most adults, most of us are using them daily. So what we have with social is a place where most people are every single day. And importantly, this shows no signs of stopping. I mean, just look at these charts. This is all started in 2005. That's when YouTube launched. A couple years after that, Facebook opened to the public. I was in high school when this was all happening, meaning I'm a digital native, yes, but my family also had a rotary phone growing up. So I've been on both sides. Now, consider the generation behind me, Gen Z, the generation currently in high school, in college, and entering the workforce, responsible for the rise of TikTok. They are the first generation to be raised in a world where social media always existed. Or the generation behind them, which includes my two daughters, Gen Alpha. Yeah, it's crazy to think about, but social is still in its infancy. Embracing the Great Commission means taking the good news to the people. And in the scope of human history, we've never seen anything like social in terms of attention and scale. It gets better though, because something as powerful as social media must have a high cost to entry, right? To be able to distribute your message to that many people, surely that isn't something accessible to the average church of 100 people or so, right? Wrong. You can create an account and publish your message for free. And importantly, in the new era of social media that we're in, the likelihood of your message reaching a wide audience that includes the local area where your church resides is quite high. Wait, what do I mean by that? Well, let's do a little social media history, and let's begin where it all started. The social graph era began on September 5th, 2006, the day Facebook opened for public registration and rolled out the newsfeed. And what was the social graph era all about? The organic content you saw on your feed was generated by the friend and family connections you had on the platform, aka your social graph. At this time, the chronological algorithm was the backbone of the newsfeed, so not only would the content you see be from your friends and family, but it would also show up in the order in which the posts were published. Now, there was one big downside of this era, in my opinion, at least for creators. It was very difficult to grow and reach a wide audience because your content was really only seen by the existing connections you had. This leads us to the second era of social media, the one that we are in right now, the discovery era, beginning on August 5th, 2020, the day Instagram announced Reels, the day Meta succumbed to the pressure put on them by a new upstart social media app called TikTok, an app that would go to change the entire landscape of social media. Why? Well, because it had nothing to do with the social graph. It didn't even have a newsfeed. It had a For You page. A For You page that showed you content not based on your friend and family connections, but instead your own viewing habits and personal interests. And this new paradigm was so disruptive that Meta completely changed their algorithms. Both Facebook and Instagram would never be the same. Not just them, but Twitter, now known as X, and YouTube also embraced these discovery algorithms. And for me, as much as I do sometimes miss the chronological algorithm, I much prefer the discovery era of social because it fixed that big challenge for creators in the social graph era, reach. Because in the discovery era, the likelihood of your church reaching a wide audience that included your local community, it's quite high. And what's so powerful about the discovery era for churches is that because discovery algorithms have a local geographic component, that means that people that live in your church's local area that are not yet connected to your church are more likely to see your content than someone like me who probably lives very far away. It's an amazing time to be doing digital ministry. Don't believe me? I don't blame you. But let's look at a handful of churches that are doing this. First, a smaller church called Mosaic that has grown 5 times in the last few years, seeing 60% of its new visitors come from social media. We sat down with their pastor on our podcast, The Pro Church Tools Show, to dive deep into how they're doing it. That conversation is linked in the description. Or a church plant that meets in a middle school, Passion Creek Church. They've heavily invested in YouTube the second largest search engine in the world, to get the word out about their church. And the results? Most of their growth in the last few years has also come from people discovering them on social media. My podcast co-host Alexander Bills and I also sat down with their pastor to talk to him about how this is happening in the church. Linked below. Or what about One Church? A church started about 9 years ago with 90 people. Today, they're 1,800. They've got 250,000 followers on TikTok and 100,000 on Instagram. We sat down for a conversation with their creative director, also on the Pro Church Tools show. A creative director, by the way, that started by herself at this church, doing all the digital and creative stuff solo, and now leads a team of 5 full-time staff. That conversation also linked in the description as well as on the screen. And why do we care about numbers and metrics? Well, because every single one represents a real person. And with discovery algorithms, a lot of these people are local. Here's a story from the pastor of Cornerstone Church. Quote, "My wife came home from the chiropractor a few weeks ago saying the doctor recognized her last name and asked if I was a pastor. He's all over my Instagram feed right now," the chiropractor said. So that's a tangible example of someone hearing the good news online, a person who does not attend our church or follow us online, but lives in our local area. Or consider this from Transformation Church. Quote, "There was a lady that just recently started going to our church. When I met her, she said to me, 'I've been watching online and engaging with your social accounts, and this is what drove me to finally come in person. The fact that I was able to follow online for so long.'" And here's another church, smaller, 200. This is Gateway Church. After just a few weeks of using social media purposefully and seeing the discovery algorithms at work. Quote, "I was at work last week. I'm a bivocational pastor. And someone that I work with about once a month came up to me and they said, quote, 'Are you a minister? You showed up on my TikTok feed.' And then it happened again. I was picking up a grocery order at the supermarket and a guy comes up to me and says the same thing. 'Are you a pastor?' And when I said yes, he responded, 'You showed up on my TikTok feed. My wife and I, we're looking for a church and we're gonna be checking yours out.'" As the pastor of Gateway Church described it to me, quote, "People are seeing us, knowing that our church is here, and we're getting the gospel in front of people that we otherwise would not be able to reach." Each of the quotes from those 3 churches, Cornerstone, Transformation, and Gateway, are also linked in the description. We did entire case studies with those churches talking about how social is positively impacting their faith communities. And I'm highlighting these stories from real churches because I have been teaching churches how and why to embrace social media for a decade now. And for years, the emphasis of my teaching was using social platforms to build the faith of the people in your church, to engage them in spiritual practice, and to keep your congregation connected throughout the week. Those objectives are still what we aim for on social media, but there's more now, because now we can also reach our local area and get them connected to our church using social platforms. All of those stories I just shared, those are from the last few years. What changed in the last few years? It's this new era of social that we're in, the discovery era. And there's no reason why your church cannot be one of the churches that I just highlighted if you take this seriously, because it's true. The early church didn't have social media, but they used every tool at their disposal to take the message of Jesus to the ends of the earth. And our faith is here today because of that early church. We have tools today that they couldn't have even dreamed of. And I, for one, am going to continue to champion and resource the churches that are using these tools. To that end, you might be wondering, well, what kind of posts are these churches even publishing that are reaching so many people in their local area? How are they doing this? Well, it's not the kind of content that excelled in the social graph era, I can tell you that much. Before we can begin sketching out our church social media calendars and what we'll be publishing, we need to install policy that outlines the how and the why. And there are 10 rules for this. This entire social media policy is in the ebook I shared at the beginning of the video. If you didn't download it then, here's that QR code again. You can just pause the video and scan it. The link is also in the description. Rule number 1, our efforts on social must be informed by Christ. What is the biblical reason to be on social media in the first place? Perhaps you've encountered resistance in the past from senior leadership on the topic of social because maybe they're uncertain how it aligns with the mission of a church. So, simply put, embracing the Great Commission means taking the good news to the people. And in the scope of human history, I said it once, I'll say it again, we've never seen anything like social media in terms of attention and scale. So of course, now we have to confront a follow-up question. All right, sure, but how should churches use social media? And again, let's look to scripture, because here's what I see. When Jesus spoke, he often used ideas accessible to the average person as entry points to talk about the kingdom of God. A few examples: agriculture, farming, baking, economics, labor, wine, sheep. The idea here is simple. Find the intersections between faith and culture? Where can the good news cross paths with the lived experiences of the people that you are trying to reach? Rule number 2, use social media to do ministry, not just promote ministry. What does this actually mean for you? Well, let's look at 2 examples. In this first example, we've got a church using social media to promote an upcoming in-person prayer event they're hosting, and this is a prototypical example of how most churches use social, but instead of inviting people in your church to pray soon, why not invite them to pray now? Like in this post from Legacy Church, 3 biblical declarations to pray over your marriage. A guided prayer rooted in scripture so people know exactly what to say. And just look at the traction that this post got. 35,000 likes and close to 800,000 views. Churches like Legacy Church are doing a great job using social to do ministry and not just promote ministry. And we did a whole podcast with their social media director and production director on the Pro Church Tools show. Link for that on the video itself and in the description. Rule number 3, hashtag no weeks off. Look, every church affecting life change online is different, but they all have one thing in common. They consistently make great content for their community. Social media is a long game, and there's really only one key to success. Ready for it? Post content that is valuable to your church for the next 10 years. Why 10 years? Because it's a really long time. And that's what relationships demand. Years and years of meaningful investment. You don't have to post every day, but you do need to show up every week and publish. Rule number 4, reach wide and connect deep. Right now, you're looking at analytic screenshots from churches that we're working with at Social Sermons. And this is what it looks like when you have a post that reaches a wide audience on social. These little circles represent the total number of accounts the post reached. The light blue, almost white looking part of the circle is non-followers. The blue part is followers. So these are all typical small, mid-sized churches. And this one here, the post reached close to 13,000 total accounts, and only 73 of those were the church's existing followers. The other 2 have similar ratios. And so this is what it looks like when a post reaches wide. But we also want to connect deep. We want social media to invite people to take their next step, which is why at the end of every social sermon, we have an end screen inviting people to get connected with the church. This might mean following the account for more. This might mean listening to the full sermon via podcast or on YouTube. And what do those invitations actually translate to? That brings us to rule number 5. Social media is a springboard for discipleship. Not just views and likes, but actual next steps being taken because of a social media post. Consider this testimony a pastor shared with me. This is a DM this pastor received. Quote, I was scrolling through Facebook and came across a clip of your sermon from yesterday that grabbed my attention. On my lunch break, I listened to your entire sermon. It convicted me and challenged me. I've been hot and cold in my walk with Jesus. To be honest, I've never fully committed to him, but I know what I have to do now and also understand that my repentance has to bear fruit. So let's track this person's journey. They watch the sermon clip on Facebook after it grabs their attention. An invitation at the end of that social sermon is made to watch the full message. This person then dedicates their lunch hour to doing that, which leads them to recommitting their life to Christ and getting in touch personally with a pastor for pastoral care. Social as a springboard for discipleship. But none of that could have happened if this church missed one important step, and that's rule number 6. Stop the scroll. Recall what this person said at the beginning of their testimony. Quote, I was scrolling through Facebook and came across a clip of your sermon yesterday that grabbed my attention. The prerequisite to life change and discipleship and people hearing the good news is attention. It's the most valuable commodity we can possess as churches, online and in person, because without it, it doesn't matter how great our message is because no one will hear it. So what we do is after we've identified a portion of the sermon that would make sense for social, we write a hook and put it on the center of the screen for the first 3 seconds. This is what stops the scroll. It's the promise we make to the viewer. If you give us your time and attention, here's what you'll get in return. Because attention must be earned, and the hook is how we do that. Rule number 7, offline and online ministry must work together as allies, not adversaries. Now, I haven't addressed this at all yet. I've saved it, but there will be people that watch this video that think to themselves, social cannot replace in-person gatherings, to which I would say, correct. I fully agree with you. But here's what I'll also say. What we do in person can never replace what we do online. And listen, you might shy away from that idea at first, so allow me to explain it a bit further. Your week has 168 hours. For most churches, roughly 1 of those hours is dedicated to an in-person service. So that still leaves 167 hours beyond that where you won't be meeting in person with your church. This also assumes your entire congregation attends service every week, which is unlikely, but you can still connect with them online. And this is why fundamentally online and offline ministry need to work together. The mission of our churches is to affect life change. And both offline and online ministry play a unique role in making that happen. Going back to rule number 5, social media being a springboard for discipleship. I'm not suggesting that discipleship occurs entirely or even primarily through digital platforms, not at all. That happens best through in-person relationship and the kind of proximity that can only happen face-to-face. But social media can be the springboard for that in the way it was for that person in the DMs. Rule number 8, repeat the best, forget the rest, and continue to test. Here's a social media secret you probably won't hear very often. Nobody knows what they're doing. You can talk to any person you look up to online, and they'll tell you about all of the times they posted content they were super excited about only to see it fall flat. Inversely, they'll tell you some of their most popular posts were pieces that they thought were subpar. They never could have envisioned them taking off the way they did. So when you stumble upon a post type that resonates with your audience, use it again and again and again, and keep pulling from that well until it runs dry. Legacy Church did this exact thing with their bold declarations list post. After the first one performed so well, they did another one, 3 declarations to pray over your finances. And another one, 3 declarations to pray over your children. And guess what? Those posts popped off too. Repeat the best, forget the rest, and continue to test. That last stanza is really important. You'll want to reserve a small amount of creative energy and space on your social media calendar for trying new stuff, because you never know what kind of post might resonate with your audience. You know, there was a time when Legacy Church had never published one of those list post reels. If they hadn't continued testing, they never would have stumbled upon it. Rule number 9, all it takes is one video. Here's a post from a church we're working with at Social Sermons a few weeks before this. They emailed me saying, "Hey Brady, when is it gonna happen for us? We've been following all the best practices, we've been doing what you're saying, but it's not clicking yet." And then shortly after, boom, more than 10 million views, more than 75,000 shares. Their Facebook page grew 407%. You can read the full case study of this church linked in the description below. But this is how online is different from in person, because sure, you know, we have services in person where more people come than on a typical Sunday, right? Often that's Easter or Christmas, but what happens the week after that? Very few, if any, return. Online though is different, because if you follow the no weeks off approach and you implement the principles in this policy, you will have a post that reaches a wide audience. And because we're inviting those people to connect deeper with your church, a subset of that audience will follow your church's account, which means the next time you post, you'll have more attention than you did previously. In effect, with every big post, you set a new baseline for your church online, and it becomes this positive cycle. How does it start? All it takes is one video. We see it all the time with churches. You just need to stick with it. And rule number 10, I call this the church advantage. Listen up. I know it's not easy to serve in a church. We don't have the resources, time, experience, or budget that businesses do. But our churches do have something that does not exist across virtually any other industry, and it's a massive advantage for us. What is it? Churches are one of the only organizations in the world with senior leaders that already create and share a message every single week. And thanks in part to the pandemic, most of our churches now have video recordings of those sermons if we didn't before, which means we are all sitting on gold mines of content for social media. Like, imagine you were a real estate agency, a law firm, or a dentist's office. You need to plan and create for social media above and beyond everything else you already do. But as churches, we can simply rely on our centuries-old tradition of preaching the good news from the pulpit and then bring that creative and spiritual work that has already been done to social media. Essentially, we as churches get to skip the first step of social media, where we have to come up with the ideas. The ideation process is already baked into the weekly rhythms of church. Okay, now that we've outlined our church's social media policy, we have the freedom and the foundation to build out our church's social media calendar. So next up, I'm gonna show you how I take a single sermon and turn that into a full week's worth of social media content, from reels to quotes to carousels to text threads to blog posts and even full-length YouTube videos. This social media calendar covers every major platform. All the best tips and tricks are of course also packaged into your ebook for handy reference. First things first, it all starts with me watching the sermon in its entirety. No bots or AI. And trust me, I have experimented with those tools extensively. I wanted them to work, I really did, because they promised to be a huge time saver, but they were all so bad. And there's so much we can use AI for, we'll get to that a bit later, but the quality of the social media content we're gonna be creating here is 100% dependent on your review of the sermon. The whole process hinges on this part. And what I'm looking for are standout sections that reside at the intersection of faith and culture and that are ideally either emotional, relatable, or controversial. Now hear me clearly. When I say controversial, I don't mean sensational without substance. I don't mean outrage bait. And I don't mean anything disingenuous. But just consider that the way of Jesus runs counter to culture. And by virtue of that, will be controversial to many. Here's a great example, a post with the title, "Why Your Spouse Matters More Than Your Kids." That's a pretty common teaching in many churches. Outside the church, not so much. And that played a big part in this post reaching a wide audience. Back to my review of the sermon, I'm really looking to mark out 5 different sections. I'm looking for 3 sections that are 60 to 90 seconds long each. That's what we're gonna use to turn into 2 short vertical videos and 1 carousel post. I'm looking for a quote that I can take out, and I'm looking for a longer section between 6 and 20 minutes that will turn into a full-length YouTube video. Once I've found those timestamps, I start working on the vertical videos first. And out of the gate, the main challenge I need to solve is contextualizing these sermon clips for the social media audience, because I've seen the whole sermon, they haven't. They're missing 20, 30, 40 plus minutes of additional material. The secret? Writing a hook and injecting it into the first 3 seconds of the video. I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done, and then we'll work backwards on how to produce it. And speaking of like, could you hit that thumbs up for me? It really does help the channel out. And subscribe as well if you haven't already. Thanks in advance. Writing a good hook comes down to what I call the 3 C's: cliffhanger, comment, and care. And when I write a hook, I give each of those 3 categories a score out of 5. Combined, my total score needs to be higher than 10 out of a total possible 15 points. Otherwise, the hook that I've written it's not gonna stop the scroll of a person on social. And the first C is cliffhanger. What's the mystery I'm creating here? We'll take a look at our hook. The number 1 job of a parent. That's an unfinished loop. I could have written it as why it's the parent's job to bring their children to Jesus. That's accurate, it's faithful to the subject matter, but that hook already reveals the thesis. No good. The next C is common, and parenting content will always excel here, because it's the kind of subject matter that aligns with scripture and the missional emphasis of most churches, but it's also something our culture desperately needs. And there's that intersection of faith and culture again that we're looking for. And then finally, the last C is care. Does a person going about their day care about what you're talking about? And I always like to use gratitude as kind of my negative example here, because we can all agree, practicing gratitude is healthy, it's rooted in scripture, and it's something that we could all do a little bit more of. But when I wake up in the morning thinking about my work and my kids and the finances and my marriage, practicing gratitude is not top of mind. It doesn't mean we can't bring people to that place, but we don't want to start there because that's not where their attention is. Their attention is on their kids though. 3 more tips for you on these vertical videos. First, and I see churches mess this up all the time, keep your captions and graphics away from where the on-screen elements of the social media apps will go. I have a layer on my timeline with an overlay that guides me to make sure I'm staying in the safe zone. Otherwise, your captions will just get cut off by the like button on Instagram, let's say, and it's gonna look sloppy and make the captions difficult to read. Next, when you're compiling your video, it's okay and even recommended to emphasize the same part twice. So for me, one of my go-to moves is to have the video portion that's covered by the hook at the start in the video again a second time. So for example, the pastor here at the beginning of the clip says, "This is the primary role for us as parents." That clip shows up again later on in the video at the 18-second mark. The emphasis helps the message sink in better, and practically, because this phrase is first used at the beginning of the video, when the hook is on screen and the captions have not yet arrived, and while many people are scrolling on their phone with audio on silent, that means if you missed it the first time, you get a second chance to hear it. And then finally, when dealing with sermon videos, the footage resolution is sometimes not so great. So when I'm creating covers for these, I'll grab a still and upload it to an AI tool called Remini. And here's where AI can be helpful. It will upscale the image and clean it up, which leads to a much sharper and quality cover for the thumbnail and grid. This is the process I use for creating 2 vertical videos for the week. They'll get published to Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and X. That's 10 posts across 5 social platforms already. We'll put those on Tuesday and Thursday. Next up is the quote post. Largely straightforward here as I'm listening through the sermon. I'm always waiting for those, pithy one-liners that pastors often go to. The quote post is the easiest post to compile in the week, typically. So if you wanted to do that first, that's cool as well. You want the quote to be snappy, short, And again, in one of those three categories of emotional, relatable, or controversial. So here's the one I've got. Christians have no business in judging the behavior of unbelievers. It's under 100 characters, that's awesome. And we're gonna put this on Monday, published as an image to Facebook and Instagram and as text only to X. The next thing we're gonna do is take that third 60 to 90 second segment we've identified, extract the transcription, and use this to make our carousel. Now, how you go about this is really up to you. If you are an experienced writer, you may want to prepare the carousel yourself using the transcription you've generated. You may also want to explore an AI tool that rewrites or rephrases content. And this is one of the ways that I do believe churches can ethically use AI. If you have the source material already, and you're not asking the AI to come up with something from scratch, and you're just having it polish up the prose, let's say. And on the design front with carousels, we have seen the best performance with minimal design. On the cover, we put a big, bold headline and then smaller text in the remaining slides. So here's what I came up with, and we'll publish this to Instagram on Wednesday. Now, the downside of carousels is that you can really only post them to Instagram. So to fix this, we're gonna take the cover image only and publish that to Facebook and X and use the copy from the entire carousel to create a text thread. Voila. Now, recall in my sermon review, I marked off 5 sets of timestamps, 2 shorter segments that we've used for our vertical videos, 1 quote, a 3rd shorter segment for our carousel. We just used that as well, which just leaves us with our longer 6 to 20 minute section that's gonna power our YouTube video and our blog post. We'll start with YouTube. It's the 2nd largest search engine in the world, and the average length of a first page YouTube video is 14 minutes, 50 seconds. Your church has video content already filmed, perfect for YouTube. But it's too long. The title is not optimized for search. It might be tucked away in the live tab, so the video itself is not even visible on your channel at first glance. It doesn't have a compelling intro. It's probably lacking an eye-grabbing thumbnail. So the content is there, we just need to prepare it. So the idea here is during your sermon review to identify a segment of the overall message that can stand on its own. You know, commonly a preacher's sermon will have 3 points. Each of those points often make for a great standalone video. So here's the sermon video we're starting with, titled Conversation Starter, Foot Washing, September 3rd, 2023. Typical YouTube post for a church. This content will be sadly lost to the archives if we just leave it like this. So let's not. Here's what we ended up with. Correct length of video. Eye-grabbing thumbnail with a title optimized for search that takes the truth of scripture and makes it accessible to all people. Let's watch the first 30 seconds or so of this video together.
Most of us would have taken that time to twist the guy's leg off, right? That's what Jesus could have done at that moment. Have you ever thought about that? That to me, outside of the crucifixion, is the best demonstration of the love of God in Scripture. We only get a glimpse of Jesus' interactions with his disciples. And in those, as the gospel writers are talking about, they share some of their mistakes.
A few important notes for you. The first 10 seconds tease the content of the video with captions on screen. The captions are crucial because YouTube videos autoplay when you hover over the thumbnails on desktop. And this gives users the ability to essentially preview videos without sound before committing to them with a click. We need captions and an engaging opening to hook those viewers. I also add a backing track to this opening segment. And when I'm searching for audio for this purpose, I'll often use the keyword suspenseful because I want the track to have an unfinished feeling. And then finally, when we do transition to the full sermon clip, I'll put a lower third on the screen with the church's name, the pastor's name, and the title of the video as well. Because when people come from search, they don't know who this person is or where they're from. And so we need to make our introductions. We'll package that video up for YouTube. We'll link to the full service and message in the description, and that'll go live on Friday. Now, at this point, we've got content from Monday through Friday. The easiest post to create, the quote, is on Monday. The most involved post to create, the YouTube video, is on Friday. So if you wanted, you could go through this entire process starting on Sunday, the day the sermon was preached, and have it all done before the week is out. Personally, I would not recommend that. I'd suggest being on a week delay. There's really nothing to gain by publishing all that content before next Sunday from an effectiveness standpoint online. If anything, it's just gonna burn you out and make it more likely that you can't keep this up. And I've got a whole Instagram post dedicated to this if you want to learn more. Believe it or not though, we're not done yet. And this section, it's really only for the real sickos because what I'm also going to do now is take that YouTube video transcription and turn it into an entire blog post as I have right here, with a title optimized for search, formatted with headings, relevant hyperlinks, appropriate line breaks, bold, italics, etc. I'll embed the YouTube video that we just published into the blog post itself and use the thumbnail for the featured image, publish it to my church's website on Saturday, and now we've got an article that can rank in search engines and bolster our church's SEO presence. But more importantly, we've extracted a teaching from our pastor that can be used down the road practically. Imagine someone comes to church dealing with, in this case, betrayal. Someone on leadership meets with them for pastoral care. This essay gets printed out and given to them at the end of the session. Now, they've got something to revisit later on in the week. They've got a helpful reminder, rich in biblical encouragement from their own faith community sitting on the nightstand, let's say. Follow this process every week, and you'll have 52 written essays capturing the journey that your church has been on over the past year. The final act now is to take those essays and compile them into an actual book. I like to design it like a coffee table book with a beautiful cover and layout of pages, so it's a standalone art piece. You can sell these in your church to recoup the printing costs. You can give them away. In either case, they make for powerful and beautiful embodiments of your church family's journey over the previous 12 months. And that's how you go from one sermon to a complete social media calendar that covers every social platform and every content format, from long form text to carousels to quotes to stills to short form video to long form video. It's all here, and it's all cataloged in the ebook as well. And at this point in our time together, I've got a big, nasty question to ask you. So what? The policy, the calendar, the new era of social media. What's even the point? To build a big following online? To make your pastor internet famous? How does all of this time and effort translate to what my church actually does on Sunday and in person? I'm so glad you asked, because in the final section, I am finally going to answer that. And I hope you're ready, because of all the subject matter in this video, this next part is what I have been waiting for. This next part is what I am most excited about. How do my church's efforts on social media translate to in person? Well, allow me to introduce the Social Ministry Mountain. Reaching the summit means seeing your online efforts tangibly cross over to offline. For example, people discovering your church via social media, or planning a visit after following online. To get to the top, you'll need to scale each level in order. And let's start with the base of the mountain. And the first level we need to scale, no weeks off. You see, every church affecting life change online is different, but they've all got one thing in common. They consistently make great content for their community. And you'll know you've scaled the first level of the mountain when you've established a consistent pace of publishing that you know you can sustain indefinitely. And here's the sad truth. Few churches ever surpass this first level. Why? Because the right action in the wrong amount still fails. Most churches never even give themselves a chance to scale the rest of the mountain, to see transformation in their ministry, because they never are able to develop a sustainable rhythm for social. And I cannot stress this enough. I see it all the time. There's this burst of inspiration and commitment, a flurry of posting over a few weeks, and then things slow down a bit. Then there's a few weeks of nothing altogether, maybe a couple throwaway posts here and there, and then back to the intermittent posting routine without a real plan. The right action in the wrong amount still fails. In many ways, social media is like any health or fitness routine. It's not about intensity, it's about consistency, which is why the first level of the social ministry mountain is not no days off, it's no weeks off. And if you can commit to this, if you can develop the sustainable rhythms and routines necessary to scale this first level of the mountain, you'll get to the second level, which is the viral for me level. And here's the bottom line. In the discovery era of social, quality content is rewarded with increased organic reach. And so after you've scaled level 1, the next threshold is a viral for me post. A viral for me post is defined as any content you publish that reaches 10 times the audience that an average post of yours would reach. So for example, if a normal post of yours reaches 200 people, a viral for me post is one that reaches 2,000. Reaching new audiences means more opportunities for growth. And the more viral for me posts you stockpile, the sooner you'll reach level number 3. Level number 3 is the 10x growth rate. The 10x growth rate is a 4% monthly growth threshold. Here's what that means. Adding new followers to your audience at a pace of 4% per month translates to 10x growth over 5 years. So for example, if your church has 500 followers today, a 4% monthly growth rate will translate to 5,000 followers within 5 years. this level of growth is dramatic, but realistic for every church. It's simply a byproduct of no weeks off and a handful of viral for me posts. And this was crystallized for me when I spoke with a church that we're working with at Social Sermons. They're a mid-sized church trying to improve their social media presence, and their pastor was a bit dismayed because we had been working together for about 6 months and their growth on social had not yet skyrocketed, which is something we do see sometimes. And so I asked this pastor, okay, we're publishing content to Facebook, to Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Which of those platforms is showing the most traction so far? And he responded, well, we've had a couple of posts do really well on Instagram and Facebook, but surprisingly, in terms of new followers and subscribers, YouTube is the one that's caught on the most. And so I dug into the numbers a bit deeper for him, and here's what I found. At the growth rate we had established on YouTube for this church, in the first 6 months that we had been working together, they had eclipsed 500 subscribers, which was exciting. But if you tracked their growth projections over the next 5 years, they're right now on pace to surpass 10,000 subscribers on YouTube within 5 years, which is a massive deal. And again, this is why I put together the Social Ministry Mountain and why I stressed in the social media policy segment of this video that the best approach to social is consistently posting quality content for years, because this is what it can translate to. The problem? Things don't move as fast as people want, and so they abandon the plan too early. They never see the fruit from their efforts because the harvest doesn't come on their terms. Which also means they never reach the summit of the Social Ministry Mountain. And I call this the crossover because at the top of the Social Ministry Mountain, you'll begin seeing crossover events. These are interactions with new visitors where they tell you after visiting in person that they first started following your church on social, like with Transformation Church. These are moments at the grocery store where your pastor hears from a family new to the area that they plan on attending church for the first time soon, like with Gateway Church. These are connect cards being returned, noting these folks first heard about your church on social, like Trey from Passion Creek Church, where most of his church's new members have come from social in the past few years, or Jeremy with Mosaic Church, where 60% of his church's new visitors have come from social. These are crossover events, the harvest from your efforts online. Now, there's one more piece to this puzzle, and it's crucial to why I love social media so much, and I call this the fallback. You're looking at the graphic right now because perhaps your senior leaders or you yourself have not yet invested fully into social media, but maybe your church has dabbled in traditional media like mailers or billboards or even radio or TV spots in the past. So how does social media stack up against traditional media in terms of helping your church reach new people? Because that's what this is all about. Here's the diagram I have for you, breaking it all down. Let's start with traditional media. Notably, the distribution of these materials has a cost. It costs money to rent a billboard, to print the mailers, to pay for the TV or radio airtime. And then there are two possible outcomes. Did your traditional media efforts help your church reach new people? Yes? Outstanding. The distribution cost was worth it. No? Well, too bad. That was a big chunk of the budget. Let's compare this to social now. Importantly, the distribution cost is free. Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and TikTok all reward quality content with free, increased organic reach, which is disproportionately focused on your church's local area. So already a big leap ahead of traditional marketing. And then the same question, did your efforts help the church reach new people? Yes? Outstanding. And distribution didn't cost a cent. No? Too bad. The good news? And this is the big thing to pay attention to here. Everything we published still served our existing congregation. This is the fallback. Even if your church doesn't reach new people, even if, for whatever reason, everything we've discussed here doesn't work for your church, if it fails miserably, not a single new person is reached, again, just using these extreme outcomes as the worst possible scenario, even then, your consolation prize is engaging your existing congregation that follow you already online in spiritual practice, reminding them of the promises of God, proclaiming the good news to your existing congregation, and being a springboard for discipleship for them. Now think of those mailers you paid a hefty sum for and left across your neighborhood. If no one comes to your church from that, what's the consolation prize? What's the fallback? Nothing. It costs you a bunch for distribution and it didn't serve your existing congregation at all. This is, again, what makes social media vastly superior to traditional media. Even if, worst case scenario, you don't reach new people, you've served your existing congregation well. And in the 167 hours beyond Sunday service, we need to be reminded of the goodness of God just as much as anyone else. I promise you that. All of the material in this video has been refined from working one-on-one with churches. And if you've made it to this point in the video and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I'm on board, I see the value, but can you just do it for me? We're glad to step into that role in your church. Socialsermons.com is our service for this. It's the complete custom social media service for your church that doesn't require you to lift a finger, but because it's custom, we do have limited space. When we first launched, we had space for 100 churches, and every one of those spots was snatched up in the first week. Since then, we've been working on expanding our capacity, and we now have room for 50 more churches. For the past 10 months, Social Sermons has been closed for public enrollment, and you've only been able to join the waiting list. All of that is changing as we gear up for our next public enrollment. I'll be letting the waiting list and email list know about open registration first, so make sure to get on the email list. Note, if you downloaded the ebook that accompanies this video, you're on it already, so you're set. I've also spent the last 10 months improving what we're doing at Social Sermons. And one of the big changes that I've made is now having 3 different packages for your church to choose from. The base package, it's what we call Social Sermons Essential, now offers your church a lower point of entry, making it more accessible. And we also have Social Sermons Standard and Complete. And the Complete plan is the one I'm most excited about because that's the plan that unlocks the weekly full-length YouTube videos, the long-form weekly blog posts, and the annual book. The Complete plan also comes with something that's brand new. It's called the 100x guarantee, where if after a year of working together, the reach of your sermons has not increased by 100x, we'll give $100 to your church every month for 12 months to budget however you see fit. We work together for a year, it's not working, and you're like, nah, let's go back to mailers. Great, we'll pay for it. That's how confident I am we can serve your church well. We've also redone the entire Social Sermons website. You can read and watch through case studies with churches that we've been working with now for close to a year. You can click through recent work to see examples of what we do, and each plan also comes with an entire presentation walkthrough to see in depth how it all works and to share with your leadership. You can head to socialsermons.com to explore pricing and see all of the details of what working with us one-on-one looks like. The next round of enrollment for Social Sermons will begin very shortly. We've got 50 open spots. Once those are taken and the enrollment period is over, we'll close down the site again and start getting to work. So watch your email closely. And if you're watching this a bit later, after it was published and the site is no longer open for public enrollment, if all those spots have been taken, you are welcome to join the waiting list or book a call if you see that option available to you. My hope with this video is it removes any hurdles or roadblocks to you truly committing to social media in your church, because I'll say it again, and I fully believe this. Social media is the best tool for churches to reach new people. But it all starts with scaling that first level of the mountain, and that means no weeks off. And bottom line, most churches never even get to that level. Often it's because they've got lots of things on their plate and social just doesn't get the focus it needs. In that case, explore Social Sermons. The great thing about partnering with us is you immediately scale that first level on the social ministry mountain. No weeks off is taken care of as soon as you sign up, for good. And we immediately start watching for that first viral for me post, which shows that we've scaled the next part of the mountain. Maybe your church is different though. Maybe you haven't committed to social for theological reasons, because leadership is resistant, or because you're not sure what to post. In that case, refer back to this video and the ebook where we have covered every one of those objections in depth, and don't let those things stop you from putting in the effort. Of course, if you have questions, throw them in the comments below. I'm glad to answer any and every question to the best of my ability. And thanks as always for your time, attention, and trust. We'll talk soon.